Hi, it's Mary Beth Decker with Sacred Grove, where people and pets heal and connect. I've got Bobbie Rae here, Bobbie Rae Boyer here today. I'm really excited because, and I don't know if everybody gets excited when we're going to talk about grief, but I am because uh, uh, Bobbie Rae knows what she's talking about, and she's worked with people through their grief, and she's experienced big losses in her life as well. So let me go ahead and read your bio here so we can introduce you to folks. So Bobbie Rae Boyer, the visionary leader behind the Centered Ground, understands the daily shifting emotions of grief. Having navigated the loss of her 21-year-old son, Anthony. Gotta stop there.
Yeah.
It is with deep compassion that she walks beside others as they process their grief, co-creating space with them to create alignment and balance as they journey through their losses. Bobbie Rae uses a variety of holistic modalities in her practice, namely personal grief counseling and coaching, movement meditation through the 5 rhythms, and vibrational sound therapy. Now, I'll put this in the comments, but you can find her at thecenteredground.com. thecenteredground.com. For those of us like me who are writing it down, but do it slowly. So, welcome, Bobbie Rae.
Yeah, thank you.
So, I'm actually asking us to talk about grief about animals, but I think it's a very similar to grief around humans. And before I jump in, I just got to say that 2 days ago from the day today was the 22nd anniversary of my husband, who passed of a heart attack 22 years ago when the kids were small. So I got him up here, and I have pictures of my dogs around who passed. So tell me about your grief journey, please.
Yeah, so always to anybody that is experiencing grief right now, or has experienced grief in the past, your husband, condolences always, because just in the book of yours that I read, love never dies. Love and grief go hand in hand. And so thank you for welcoming me. Wow, my grief story. My son passed away unexpectedly in 2019.
Oh.
And so it's fairly, it's still fairly new for me in my personal journey of grief. But recognized very early on that that I had done a lot of personal work with grief and with emotions prior to his passing. So it was a transition for me to know that where I belong currently is to help others go through that journey. But I think when I finally got to the point of touching the grief coach aspect was because I realized that the people that I was talking to, my family and my friends who were so close to me, there were words that just weren't understood, Mm-hmm. So it was very important for me to be in a place that I was surrounding myself with people that understood.
Oh, that's important. Okay, yeah. That's really important. I'm going to jump in right here because, okay, so you mentioned the blood cell show, right?
Yeah.
Peace and passing. One of the biggest myths I run into is people thinking that when you lose an animal that it's not a big deal. It's like, you wore that sweater too long, it's got a grip in it, toss it away. What is the big deal? You can get another one.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
And that's true for some, and everybody grieves differently. That's the biggest learning process for myself is especially working with so many lovely people now that are touched by humans and by animals and by whatever brings them love and joy in their life. And when we lose those things, even creating a future vision, and people lose that vision, that's grief. So grief is in so many ways the same but different for each person. You know, grief is grief.
Grief is grief.
We grieve because we were loved, and I learned those words from my coach, my grief teacher, Dora Carpenter. But yeah, it was just in the recognition that I understood how important it was for me to be able to talk the same verbiage with other people. And not that our stories were going to be the same, not that maybe their child's passing was going to have the same background, but because we were experiencing the same emotions, it was so important for me to surround myself with a knit of people that could understand. So yes, understanding, being in a place of acknowledgement. I think that's where I also recognized so much in my own journey was I had to acknowledge the grief. I couldn't ignore it. So we fall into our life sometimes, and I would say maybe with an animal, it might even be easier for us to just understand, okay, tomorrow I got to go back to work, or, you know, in 3 days, I've got to deal with what I've got to deal with, and I've got to move on, because that's how we're built. We're structured in our world to just move on, or because that's what people have said to us, that we should just move on. Like you said, you know, just, you know, another dog or another cat will come in, you know, around sooner or later. You know, that's just not the case, because that nothing's going to take the place of that specific love.
No, it's true. And there is a good wisdom in moving, and not moving on, but just moving. Like when I lost Winston, I had 2 young children, and for me, knowing that I had to get up every day and parent those kids, was I wasn't moving on, but I was doing something, you know. So having to, I think the moving on is different from just, you know, doing something to stay in touch with your life and doing something positive with your life as you carry your grief with you. Seems really important to me to find some purpose to keep going.
Just shifting our words too, you know, from moving on to moving forward. You know, it's not about moving on. Feels like you're having to let go. And people use that term a lot as well. Just let it go. You know, in a year or two, you'll have gotten over it. Things will shift. You know, I know for myself personally, my grief is never going to go away from my son. Now, the level of grief and how I resonate with it each morning and each day, and before I close my eyes at night, is the work that I choose to do with it. You know, and so yeah, it's about how do we put our feet on the floor each day and accept the joy that was in our life, from that love, and how do we move forward so that we can accept that love again, just from a different form. And so beautifully how your book speaks on being able to be open to the experiences that come after life.
I'm pretty open to them. I hope people believe that animals survive death, because that's been my experience, and I've been able to connect with them. That's not a belief system that everybody holds, and
no, but you just have to believe in yourself that, you know, just experiences are here, you know, and just to be able to experience a new love in your life is something we have to be open to, because it's so easy for us to close off and say, okay, I've experienced that once, it's never going to happen again, because I don't want to have that from any other person or animal, or, you know, whatever it may be in your life.
The other thing is, I don't think I can survive this level of grief again.
Right, right.
Right?
Please don't let this,
Please,
I can't lose again because I can't lose again.
I can't lose again. And it's there's kind of a warped logic,
Yeah.
but the consequences of shutting yourself down are so sad, because the love is what keeps us going every day from whoever shows up in our lives next.
Yeah. So, and just to extend that with my personal story, I realized that I had the choice to, every day is a choice for me to get up and choose what emotion I'm going to have for the day. It could have been very easy for me to be in this space where I have to kind of talk myself into each day, saying, okay, today is another day and I can put my feet on this floor and I can choose to be in the positive or in the negative. And I can choose to bring in, how we are this energy. And I choose to put out positive energy for myself because it's healthier for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, just being in a place of love and continued moving forward motion has been my journey, my daily journey.
How do you love your, so I, because this one has been one I work with a bit, and okay, it's been a while for me, but what I found is closing off the grief is probably not the answer. Loving the grief is like a small child that you're comforting. I don't know how else to say that, but I can't, not acknowledging the grief has not worked for me. And yet going into the grief, diving into that deep, dark pool doesn't work either.
Well, I think what we, yeah.
Yeah.
I think what we do for ourselves naturally is the anxiety and the stress of loss, or the guilt and the fear, all of these things that come up when we have that loss. It's easier to just kind of put those away in a compartment and go, okay, I can do this over here. I can live this life and I don't have to pay attention to that because it's easier. The grief work, it is work, and that's it is something that you have to really put attention and love to. This is where it's important for us to have people to talk to that have the same verbiage. This is where journals come up that are so important for us to write down the things, because sometimes we don't get the best reaction from other people when we're having conversations. They don't understand.
Can I ask you, have you thought about the things that people probably shouldn't say when somebody's telling them who they've lost? No matter if, I don't care if it's somebody's rat. I have a very affectionate memory of a rat named Eisenhower that was in our family, and he was great. But have you thought about things that you wish people wouldn't say?
Yeah. I think
I'm
early
putting you on
on,
the spot, but
no, it's okay. I think early on, your anger becomes something that you don't realize is registering to you as an emotion, because you're sad. That's the emotion that everybody expects from you to have, is just to be sad and be in pain. But words are so sensitive. We don't realize that we don't know how we're going to react to everyone's words as we're going through a very sudden loss, or something that's a planned loss, whether it be cancer or the things that we've had to plan, the passing. But yeah, I think the one misunderstood word, because a lot of where these words come from is because people are trying to console us. So yes. It's never out of anything that they're doing anything but trying to ease our pain and ease our sadness, because it makes them feel better if we're not in pain.
Sure.
We kind of become babysitters for other people when we experience loss, because we have to pamper our reactions to their words. But even just saying I understand can trigger somebody to be like, but you don't understand because you didn't have that relationship with my pet. That pet was somebody that kept me grounded every day and kept me from having panic attacks. You don't understand what that relationship is. But, we don't want to say back to them, no, you don't, we just kind of have to take that in stride and go, okay, they're just trying to support us. But even just simple words like that, I understand. Or in time, it will get better, you know, in time. Just give it a year, you know. Yeah, I mean, putting a time limit on my grief, and I will say this, and you know, my mom doesn't like me to bring too much of her up in conversation, but one of the things that I remember about my mom in her losing her grandson was somebody had said to her, just give it a year. And so when a year came around, she was kind of like, well, why am I still in pain? Why am I still grieving? And it's because there is a perception sometimes for people to put a time limit, you know, and they do say that, yeah, the average time for someone to truly grieve a loss and being able to do that grief work takes about, you know, anywhere from 3 to 7 years. And that's still not saying that when that work is done, that you're not going to have grief in your life. It's just how we show up for it each day.
Yeah, that is so true. To give it, the year stuff is so, you haven't been there, have you? Sort of thing. If they say that. And you know what, it was interesting to me, because of course it's been a long time with Winston. And who's next to him? This is a guy he was my guy for a while, when Winston, after Winston passed, he was a good companion, Mitsubishi. Yeah. But it would pop up in very weird circumstances, where I think I'm fine, I'm good, and something triggers it. And it doesn't matter how long it's been, it just surprises the heck out of me.
Yeah.
And so when people give a time limit, I think you're not paying attention to what's probably happening to you too with your losses.
Yeah. Well, and the recognition, like I said, the recognition that our loved ones in our lives that haven't experienced the actual loss, it really does comfort them to say things to make sure that you're okay, because it you know, it helps them feel like, I can't be with you 24/7, so let me say the things that feel good right now to try to make you feel better. And sometimes those trigger us even deeper and we don't realize it, because that is where the guilt starts to pile on us. Well, okay, so they said this, so in time, but what happens when a year, you know, I recognized in myself, you know, a year had passed after my son had passed, and I was like, have I done enough, you know, in this past year to recognize, you know, his life and his legacy? You know, those are the things that we have to give ourselves grace.
Yes.
You know, we have to be graceful with ourselves to just trust that it's our journey, that this is our moment that's happened. And it's not that you're being selfish. It's just that you're giving yourself grace.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
Giving yourself grace. But yeah.
One of the things that people have done with animals that I guess I sort of have something over this way, is they've done little memorials or shrines to them, which I think is just lovely. It's a really cool idea to honor their presence in your life and how much they meant to you. I even had a story. My friend Anna is a dog trainer, and she had named her training center after her dog that died. And when we connected with another dog who I know who passed away, he was like, and I'll say it the short way, but he was like really miffed because like she hadn't done anything for him yet. And she said, you named a whole training center after, you know, this one, and what do I get? So she did a little memorial, and it felt good. And you know, you believe it or not, stories, that's what they are. But something some way to remember.
It's so important for our personal comfort, and I'm always careful to say the word healing, because healing to me sometimes means that there's an end. I'm healed, you know? So I'm very protective over the word healing, but we are, you know, consciously doing healing work.
Yeah.
And with these memorials or these tributes, or however it honors you. I mean, even, you know, for myself, there's so many things that, you know, if a penny is heads up or a cardinal shows up, you know, these are things that show up in your world that give you a smile,
Yes.
to pay tribute and to honor the legacy of the life and the time that was there. Because that's where the anxiety and the stress and the guilt and the regret and all those things come in, is because we choose to sometimes forget about the good, because we're so worried about what the big words are. You know, I could have, I should have, why didn't I do this differently? You know, we pay emphasis on the things sometimes that we can't change, and that's where we give ourselves grace by letting that slide into and shift into, I'm honoring the things that made me smile. I'm giving tribute to the positive parts in my life that came from that love and from
I
that
think,
relationship.
you know, that's a really important piece of work, is for those of us who have had to decide when to end our animals' lives. We usually don't have that stuff with, not too often with people, but animals, yeah. So that's exactly what I hear is, did I do too much? Did I keep her around longer than she wanted? Did I let her go too soon? Was she in pain? Should I have tried that last, or does this send her, you know, into her passing stage? And it's so hard for people, and I get a sense sometimes that it's easier to dwell on that than it is to dwell on just the loss.
Yeah.
You know, it's like a focus over here, so you don't have to say, oh, they're not here anymore. But what you're saying is if you let go of that other stuff, that the love that comes through, I think in many cases we find that connection with our loved one when we let go of that other stuff. I think that other stuff is it's actually a barrier to our connection to the spirit of our, you know, our husband, our son, our animal, our dogs, our cats, guinea pigs.
Well, it's the busy banter that we put up as kind of like our wall of protection.
There
It's
you go.
yeah, it's like I can do this work. I know how to answer questions, and I know how to investigate, and I know how to figure out why, and I may not ever come to the answer. And that's usually what happens in grief, is that you really don't ever come up with the answers, because we can't investigate something that's not truly here anymore. You know, we can't ask questions, especially for our animals, you know, unless we're using an intuitive who can help us find those answers when they're alive. You know, we're going to struggle a little bit on our own to come up with answers, but it is easier for us to create that banter and that negative dialogue. That's easier to deal with, because sometimes the work of actually facing grief in the mirror and choosing to kind of investigate that relationship and understanding that that relationship with grief is going to be with you longer. And you've got to learn how to face that, as opposed to spending time on these questions that may never get answered.
That's true.
You know?
Lovely.
Yeah.
Thank you. Do you have any specific ways people could, I mean, I actually feel like you turn yourself away from all those questions over to the facing yourself with grief. Are there things that you can suggest with those? And there's a lot of people there's a lot of people in my life who've lost their animals in the past 6 months. So
Well, I mean, I think the biggest thing is again always making sure that you're surrounding yourself with people that have like-minded understanding. You know, we do a project with my grief clients where we do a pruning project, and it's not about pruning out people in your life, because we could prune that all day long, but we prune out the things that are negative so that we can plant the positive.
That's
Okay.
lovely.
So we do a pruning project, and that allows us to know who are our resources to keep us moving in the right forward direction, or in the direction that's calling us, you know, to keep us moving forward. Whether it's someone like you who can support the afterlife, or the, you know, or even doing the grief work prior to. So if you've got a pet and you know that this loss is going to happen, it's inevitable that it is going to show up in your relationship with your pet, you know, trying to do that grief work and that legacy work before, you know, that's something that we also forget to do for ourselves, is honoring what's here and in the present, you know. So one of the other things that we do for loss is to kind of shift us into the memory of the positive, is we do a 50 smiles project. So we have just a sheet of paper on our refrigerator that gives us the opportunity that every time we walk into our fridge, which is usually sometimes where we go when we're sad, is we get to write something down that was a good memory for us. And the more that we focus on those good, positive emotions, the more that we start to open up and receive the joy and the beauty of the new possibilities, you know? So just allowing yourself those positive smiles creates an openness for you to also, and again, it's never about replacing. That's the other thing, is we have to remember, especially with pets and animals, and you know, it's not, when you let in that same emotion, it's not that you're replacing the emotion or the love that was there before. It's that you're allowing a new type of love. You're allowing in a new type of relationship. And the only way that you're going to get to that new relationship is if you look back on the great things that came from it. You know, there's also the negative side, that some people didn't have great relationships with their loved ones, you know.
Yes.
Which creates an entirely different layer of grief. And how do we handle the animal that wasn't so great to my carpet all the time, or or just the relationships with our humans and our loved ones that sometimes weren't, we say that the reason that some people are closer to their animals than they are sometimes their own spouses is because they don't give us a level of judgment, or those moments of possible pause, because we have to think about what we say first. We're just loved with animals, right?
It is the truth.
So it's really just about trusting your relationship that you had with your loved one, that you had with your creation of future, and trusting that those positive moments you're going to learn something from, even if, again, it was a negative relationship. How are you going to, you want that same love, but you also need to learn from how you dealt with certain things. And so also honoring how we learn from those past relationships.
That's true.
It is really just, that's how we move forward, is taking steps to educate ourselves on how do we do this with an even more, setting more intention to the next time this relation shows up to our life.
I love that, because I think that every relationship is purposeful and gives us something to work on, whether it's our animals or humans. And if we start looking even the tough relationships, what was it? What did we have? Why did this person come into our lives? Why did this animal come into our lives? You can't always do that while they're here. Sometimes it's a little harder. Sometimes after they're gone. And I'd like to go back to the you were talking really well about honoring the legacy even before they're gone. And I have talked to animals who have some things that they'd like to have happen before they pass away, or they have a way that they want to go. I was checking with the dog yesterday, in fact, who finally figured out that he wanted to do a final tour. He wanted his person to take him to visit everybody who was a fan, and he had a lot of friends and fans. And so this is going to be healing for her, and it's going to make him, believe it or not, because I am an animal communicator, he's going to find it easier to transition. I met a dog who was waiting for his birthday party because the family gave him a birthday party every year, and he got that birthday party. Then again, was a legacy. So there could be things that even before they die, you might pop into your head as being a nice way to.
Well, I think a good tool in that aspect is also, you know, you listen, you know, whether it's
Yes.
using someone like you as a tool, or you just learn to listen, because I think that's one of the things that I learned, you know, after my son passed away, you know, because you search so much for those signs sometimes where you're like, I just need to know that you're okay, you know, and you do have to be open to listen. Yes. And so in the preparation aspect, you're not always going to have tools, you know, with an intuitive. So you do have to kind of open yourself up and trust that what you think you're hearing is okay, you know, and you don't have to constantly second guess yourself, because that's where we begin to build the anxiety and the stress and the guilt before it's even happened. And so if you set yourself up to just kind of learn to trust, and also already at that point, pick up the things that were positive, that are positive in your relationship, and how are you going to carry that on? Already preparing, what is this legacy from this love, this animal that has given me so much support? What am I going to take from this relationship and carry forward to the next relationship that comes into my life? And how can I help learn and expand and set even a greater intention? So it is about doing the work before, sometimes, especially having the gift of being able to prepare and say goodbye. You know, in so many ways, we don't have that opportunity to say goodbye. I didn't have that opportunity. I said goodbye to my son because I was leaving. I didn't get the opportunity to say goodbye to him in the format of you're gone.
Yeah.
So having those moments and being blessed with that opportunity, it's so important for us, because for our own personal health and our own sanity, when that animal is passed, to do the work before. Because if we're constantly just worrying about the what ifs and the should I do this and the why didn't I's while it's here, then it's just going to carry with you forward even heavier when the actual passing happens.
Oh, it's true. When you focus on that, then the time you have with your animal is spent, rather than enjoying that time with them, you're in your head. And the other, I love that you said just learning to listen, because I think the thoughts that come through, and they may even be from your animal, they're going to sound like your own thoughts. Mm-hmm. But if it comes in just really quick and it's like, wow, I hadn't thought it, you probably should just listen to it and follow it up, because those are the thoughts I think that are intuitive, and they're coming from either your own higher source, or it's your animal saying, hello, I really like this.
Well, we have to remember too, who was the caregiver of the animal, the one that could speak, and he trusted your judgments.
That's right.
Already, you know, there was already a common trust and a common relationship of you've got my back. Why would it change in the end?
That's it. It's exactly true. That is really true.
So trusting the heart and the relationship of what you had for the years that were together, or the time that was spent together, you know you hear. You just have to listen to that intention that you've set to know that you're doing the right thing.
And my thank you.
Yeah.
My own connecting with animals who have passed, I have found that when, and I deal with people who love their animals anyway, they are not mad at their people. They're like, you made your decision out of love. I'm good. And because it's everything that we do for our animals, those of us who are listening to this anyway, that's another way to let go of it, of that feeling of remorse, and is to remember that they did give us permission to be their caretakers, and we made those decisions out of love.
Yeah. And that's, just in any relationship, whether it's animal or human, building that relationship, it takes work, and you never always get it right. No. There's so many things that we make mistakes. We're human.
We do. And they're very forgiving.
Yeah. And so just really focusing on taking pause when you're in the preparation space.
I love taking pause, P-A-W-S. I gotta throw that in.
Yeah. Take pause. Take a hold of those pause, but take pause and just give yourself the space to know that this is a gift, that I am able to take this moment in preparing the end of such a special love in my life, and honor that life and that legacy. And then on the back end of that, don't let the elephant in the room, as we hear people say a lot, don't let that elephant in the room become such a quiet space for you that the grief takes over in a negative space, or puts you in a placement where that you're a good lover to animals, and animals need you in their life. So, but because you feel so wounded and so much pain, you don't get to take another relationship in. For me, I'm in my 40s. I'm not going to have another child. That was my only son. But I'm not going to let his passing be something that takes over my life in such a sadness that I don't honor his life and honor the teachings that he gave me by supporting other mothers and supporting other people through this sometimes heart-wrenching experience.
Yeah.
And it is. And I won't, I spend a lot of my my shadow is humor. So I get through humor by making people laugh, or or creating that visual that everything's okay. But what's going on the inside doesn't necessarily always reflect what's truly going on. What you see, and because I'm there doesn't mean that it's still not difficult every day.
Yeah.
And it can be that for you as well. We understand. And that's where my placement comes in, is doing the grief work with people, because sometimes it's very difficult to do on your own.
Yeah.
To try to do grief work on your own, regardless of what the loss is, regardless if it's a pet. Pets are so profound in our lives. Like I spoke to you before, I worked with someone that had post-traumatic stress syndrome because of a loss. And because of that loss, they brought on an animal in their life, and then they lost that animal. Well, can you imagine the grief that work is doing? And to try to do that on your own, it's not necessary. And that's what we have to kind of acknowledge, is that it's not necessary for us to be so strong for ourselves that we can't open up our hands and accept help.
I think that's great. I do some short kind of connections with people and their animals after they've passed and just beforehand. And sometimes and that's good. And sometimes there's the longer term relationship that people need. I remember talking to this man uh, about the loss of his dog.
Mm-hmm.
And we were over the phone. I'd never met him. And he broke down. I mean, he broke down in tears. And I said, how long has it been since you lost your animal? And I thought, probably, a month or two. It had been 8 years
Yeah.
that he carried that level of grief. And I think that's too much of a burden in it. Don't think our animals or people want us to be there in that place.
No. I think one of the clearest messages, you never know when you're going to hear the messages. You never know it, and you just have to trust that they come when they're supposed to. And I think that was actually on a call, but that you were on.
Yeah.
But it's just about hearing
Yes.
the words of, don't be sad anymore. I don't want you to be sad. That's not what your work is left on this earth. And that's what the centered ground came from, is because I still have to walk this earth and I need to do it grounded and centered. And I'm going to do this work to support others because this is a work that I truly, in the most heartfelt way, know that's difficult, but it can be done, and it can be done on your own time. And it doesn't have to be on anybody else's timeline.
I love that.
Yeah.
So tell me, most of my folks are, they live all over. Actually, some of the folks live outside of the United States.
Yeah.
Do you do Zoom things? And can you just talk about, for those who actually live near you, where you live and what you do, and then for those of us who are far away?
Yeah. So I'm in hot Wesley Chapel, Florida. And, but I will tell you this, all of my work is done through virtual or phone. And I will tell you, probably about 75% of my work is done just by phone, because when people need to cry, they don't want to be distracted by me seeing them wipe their nose all the time. So
yeah, that ugly face. Nobody ever has a good face.
So I honor the ugly cries, and I love to hear them, because that means the emotions are showing up for you, and you're doing the work that needs to be done for yourself. So a lot of the time my work is done just by phone, and we do the extra work, we do a lot of integrative work that goes along with that throughout the time that we're together. And we do that through email. But yeah, it's done by phone, because a lot of people need to be and create their own sacred space. I am a lover of creating sacred space for others, but I also trust and honor that sometimes during grief, we just have to be in our own safe space. Just as you shared, when we're honoring, getting ready to, place our animals in a place they would maybe just rather be at home, to have that ending. So sometimes to be in that comfortable space is important. So yes, I work with people all around and by phone, but also I'm very open to Zoom and all of the extra ways that we are now virtually connected.
You certainly are.
So yes, support is there, and the time that I work with a client is about 6 weeks. But that is just the initial time together. And it's very open for us to spend more time as it's needed after. But I truly work with the 5 pitfalls of grief. We really focus and mirror and start to show up for ourselves, utilizing, the anxiety and stress. Family time, something that we forget about when we have, it's like, okay, this animal was in our life every Christmas. How am I gonna handle Christmas this year? So we really start to work with family traditions and family time. We start to show up with our guilt and our regret, fear of the future, and then moving forward. And so we really try to get you to a a safe, loving, accepting space so that you can move forward, knowing that grief may not go away. That's okay if it doesn't go away. It's just, how do we walk with it each day?
I love that.
Yeah.
I believe that grief honors the soul that we're grieving, because we don't grieve for those we don't care about. We just, oh, that's too bad. But grief is profound, and it is tied to love. So thank you. We don't, our grief doesn't have to go away.
Yeah. No.
But there are ways to move forward. Thank you.
There are many ways for us to recognize in ourselves that we actually are our own healers in so many ways. And my way is not going to be 100% the way you need to move forward. So I help you investigate what's your way.
Thank you so much, Bobbie Rae.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's been wonderful. So I will put the information down when it'll be down somewhere down here on how to reach you. And I thank you for talking to us today.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. So let's see if we can do this. One more click.